Want to know how to put a figure in your paintings? Use some ovals. I'll show you how. Hello, I'm Paul from Ranson Art. Welcome to the studio. If you've ever fancied to paint the Bob Ross classic Campfire scene, but you're a bit concerned about putting a happy camper in it, well, here you go. Use some simple shapes to make a figure. Watch the tutorial, I'll show you how to do it. For today's painting I'm using this 16" by 20" canvas on which I've applied 2 coats of black gesso. This is a wet on wet oil painting technique, so I'll be starting with some Bob Ross liquid clear. For ease of use I use this small plastic pot. It has an airtight lid and I can store my paint in the freezer. My brushes for today's painting are these Bob Ross landscape brushes, a nice new 1" and a slightly older worn 1". This is the one I'll be using for the liquid clear. I'll also be using a filbert brush and a liner brush, and if you have it, a small detail brush. And of course, a Bob Ross palette knife. First thing I need to do is apply this liquid clear with this old 1" brush. Take a small amount and maybe section your canvas off into quarters. This needs to be applied very, very thinly. Hang on to your canvas and scrub it in very well. When it's all covered, finish off with some long flat strokes to even out the surface. As I mentioned, it's a thin, even coat, so just a tiny drop on your fingertips is all we need. Let's take the canvas off the easel so you can see. Just a light sheen, and if I run my finger over it, you can barely see a trace. If you're not sure how to apply liquid clear, I made a video all about it. I'll leave a link in the description down below. Here's my palette for today's painting. I've used some alizarin crimson, dark sienna, which I actually didn't use in the end, Van Dyke brown, cad yellow, yellow ochre, Indian yellow and some red. I actually add a couple more colours, but we'll start with alizarin crimson first. I'm going to use this old 1" brush again, but it's full of liquid clear, so don't forget, give it a good drying out on a paper towel. The black paint, well, that's a little bit of dust from the gesso on the canvas, but nothing to worry about. So, into the alizarin crimson, and we want a generous amount on the canvas. Don't be too mean with it. How do we know how much is on there? Well, we just have to use our fingers. So, take your hand and just use a different finger to take a sample. A little from the top, some from the middle, some from the bottom. And as you can see, my pinky little finger is nice and red. That's a bit oily. And this one, well, that's nearly all oil. So we actually want it to be like this, cherry red. Another quick test, and there, perfect. Next, the horizon line. Somewhere towards the bottom of the canvas, I'm going to use my 1" brush and just the handle down to the end of the bristles, and hold this against the side of the canvas. I'm using 2 small map pins. This will tell me where my little camperman is going to sit. Now, take that nice 1" brush and get a good amount of cadmium yellow. Pull it out and load the brush very well. And pick a point above that horizon line and over to the right. And as you can see, as soon as it hits that crimson, it goes a lovely flame orange colour. Keep on building up the cad yellow. You want to get a nice bright glow, but not so bright that it overpowers where we're going to put the little campfire. Twirl with your brush to create the illusion of flickering light on the background foliage. We'll be adding lots of plants and trees and bushes in a moment. Let this fade as it moves away from the point where the campfire is going to be. Now use the side of the brush to take out any little brush strokes. Just soften it down. pulling out and brushing back in again. I need to add some little tree trunks to my forest, but I want to be careful where I add them. I don't want a tree growing in the middle of my campfire. It'll look very strange, so make sure when you do this next step, you don't put one right through the centre of your bright spot. You'll understand in a moment when I do it. I'm going to take Van Dyke Brown on my filbert brush, load the brush well, really glue those bristles together, and then using the side of the brush, you want to just drag the brush down the canvas, and where it touches, it leaves a little impression of a tree trunk. There'll be lots of foliage going over the top, so you won't see as much of this as you can now. But drop them in here and there, and don't forget, don't put one right through the middle of your campfire. I need a nice dark underpainting colour for my forest. I'm going to take equal parts of alizarin crimson and Van Dyke brown. Mix them together well. We're looking for a very dark chocolate burgundy colour. This dark sticky colour will be the basis of all the foliage in my forest. Now, use that old 1-inch brush again, but I'm going to take it through the paint in one direction. Pull it through, and I want to round over the corner of my brush. Notice how when I press into the paint it leaves a stippled effect. I'm using the rounded side to the top. I load my brush the same way each time so that when I press and push with the bristles it creates this little sort of explosion of dark colour. This is one little bush, and I'll carry on adding little bush shapes all through the forest, both sides. This technique relies upon using a sticky dark underpainting to which we can add a thinned highlight colour, because a thin paint sticks to a thick paint. For that highlight coat I'm going to use my nice 1-inch brush, and again I'm going to load it with the rounded edge first. I'm going to be using Indian yellow and yellow ochre. So pull your brush through the paint in one direction again. I tend to use that rounded side of my brush to remind me which way I've pulled it through. Again, stipple the paint on your palette. There's that rounded corner. Nice and open and lacy and free. Rounded side to the top. This time gently, very light touches. And as you can see, each little bristle gives up a tiny dot of paint. Brightest side to the flyer, and let the paint run out for the shadow side. This could be one part of a tree or a large bush. So don't fill out completely. Leave some dark areas for the shadows in the background. Rounded side to the top again. Let's paint some more bushes. I'll do a little bit of time lapse through this. Now it's time to put the figure in our painting. You just need a pencil and a scrap of paper, like an old envelope. That's my favourite to use. My figure needs to be about 1.5 inches tall and reclining against a tree. So drop in the rough shape of a tree, and then we can add the first oval. This wants to be at a nice angle. The person is sitting partly behind the tree, so you can clip the corner off. Add a second oval that's for the thigh, and then another oval, and that's for the lower leg. The next oval is an arm and a hand resting on the knee. And the last oval is for a head. Let's give them a hat. I think my little camper man is catching 40 winks after a long day hiking. All he needs is a foot. And we're done. Here's where my happy camper is going to sit, beside his fire. X marks the spot for the campfire. Let's just draw in the shape of the tree, and using my little reference picture, we'll add some ovals. I'm going to use my little detail brush and some of that chocolate burgundy colour to block in the silhouette of my dozing camper. Now time to add the tree. I'm going to use my palette knife. I'm going to just scrape away some of the surplus paint that's going to be behind the tree. This just makes life easy for us when we're adding that nice rich dark colour. We're not fighting over layers and layers of paint. I'm going to use my filbert brush and some more of that burgundy chocolate colour. This can be a nice characterful tree. Give them a few lumps and bumps and the odd limb. Now for some highlights of that flickering fire. Use your palette knife and a small amount of Indian yellow and ochre. Pick up a small roll of paint and just touch the side of the tree closest to where the campfire is going to be. You only need to touch gently, and as the paint runs out, think about doing the middle of the tree and the area of the tree which is more in shadow. You can create lovely bark effects on a tree this way, and when it dries and you touch it with your finger, it even feels like bark. Now for the first of two colours that Bob didn't use in the original painting, titanium white. I'm going to take a small amount of this, spread it out, and then use a tiny bit of cad yellow. I want a bright colour for my campfire. I want a second colour as well. That's for the embers. This time, a little bit of cad yellow and just a speck of red. Leave these colours marbled. I use the short blade of my knife and some of that nice orangey yellow colour. Very gentle with the pressure, and just let the paint stick and break. Now a touch of the white and yellow mixture. Take care not to let your little campfire get too big. They have a habit of growing on you. The more you do, the more fun they are. Finally, a little roll of that burgundy brown mixture again, for a few little logs, sticks and twigs. Let's add a nice grassy riverbank next. With my nice brush and a mixture of cad yellow, yellow ochre, Indian yellow and even a touch of red, pull the paint out flat and give the brush a little push. Notice the little ridge of paint building up on my palette. The same little ridge of paint is building up on the tips of my brush. Now, holding the brush the same way as we had it to the palette, not straight on, but drop the handle, just gently touch every little bristle has a tiny little bit of paint, but it doesn't last long. After a couple of touches, it runs out. So go back and reload, slowly building up some nice grassy textures. Over here, in the shadows, let the paint run out. Let's add a little bit more red to my mixture. Lovely warm orangey colour. Perfect. The brightest colours are going to be directly under the little campfire. Also notice that I don't fill it completely. I leave lots of little dips of dark here and there. I want to reflect the campfire in my water. So I've taken some of that bright yellow and orange mixture on my 1-inch brush and press firmly and push and pull straight down. Work your way from the centre of the painting out to the sides, letting the colour become progressively darker. I'm going to add a little extra sparkle to my reflections by using some of that bright yellow-white colour. Again, just touch and drag. Let the paint break as you pull it down the canvas. I'm going to take my 1-inch brush and very gently pull down and then brush gently across. I just want to blur this slightly, but very gentle touch. I'm going to add a few dark ripples to the water. So, clean palette knife. Just cut through the paint and zigzag backwards and forwards. Add as few or as many as you wish. But meander backwards and forwards to create a nice sense of movement on the water. This is the point where Bob finished his painting, but I want to add a little extra in some of these shadows. So here's my second colour. I've got a little bit of Prussian blue. I've mixed it with some alizarin crimson to make a dark lavender colour, and I'm going to take just a speck of white. I want a sort of dark lavender colour for some shadowy foliage in my little forest. I'm going to use my filbert brush and add just a touch here and there. Don't overdo it. Now for some finishing touches. I'm going to take a little bit of that yellow and white mixture to add a little extra sparkle to my tree trunk. Just a little here and there makes such a big difference. I'll add a little bit of the shadowy blue colour to the back of the tree. That's what's called referred light. It's light that bounces back off the foliage. And finally, a little bit of campfire glow on my happy camper's legs, body, face and the top of his hat. Just time for a signature, and my Bob Ross Classic campfire painting is finished. If you've enjoyed my tutorial, don't move. There's another one coming right along for you. Happy painting, people!